is James Feeney. Welcome to or back to my channel. Today I wanted to go through and do a VR to Anna Astral Lady Tarot for another one of her amazing hashtags. I think these are great ways of engaging with the community, so I'm really glad that she's shared another one with us. And this one is my personal tarot. So she mentioned a bit about how there are those more universal symbols that we see in the cards, and that we attribute meaning to those, but more so to take a look at certain cards and what they mean to us, or associations that we draw from our experience in our life. So I've picked a few different cards out of the Rider-Waite-Smith specifically, and the Centennial version. Ones that I just have these sorts of feelings about, or that kind of remind me of certain things, or yeah. So I'm gonna go through and share with you guys a little bit about what these mean to me, and when I see them, what I think about. So yeah, and these ones I just happen to have stronger feelings about, I guess. So that was actually an interesting process of going through the deck and thinking about that. I had a few in mind that I knew, but then as I was flipping through, I was like, wait, I felt this way about this, or a certain memory was evoked, even if it was more so connected to tarot. Yeah, so I'll just share with you guys. So the first one I'll share is the Three of Cups. And we know that this one is very much like a card of friendship, and a lot of us take it in the way of viewing social circumstances and stuff. But you see the three girls with the glasses raised, and for me, whenever I see this, I think of my two best friends, and I'm a Sagittarius, and they're both Sagittarius too. Is that the plural of Sagittarius? Sagittariuses? I don't know. But they've been my close best friends since I was a very little kid, and we are to this day. We have a group chat called Sag Squad, and I talk to them pretty much every day. And when I see this, I automatically think of us and our times together when we go on adventures and we like to go out and have drinks. And so I look at this and I just think of them. And especially whenever I get this card, when I draw it for myself, I almost always am thinking that it is talking about them. So there have been times when I'm doing a reading and I get this card and I more so think about them than the concept of friendship, or that socialization or synergy that I would normally get with this card. For me, it's automatically connected to them, and that's just how it is for me. So that was the fun one. Next, I have the Seven of Cups. And for me, this one always gave me such a bad feeling of foreboding. I think it's mostly this red outlined one here that just doesn't feel right, and the fact that it's almost masked with a cloth over it. Something about it rubs me the wrong way. I know it's about illusion, so it's not supposed to make us feel happy, but it almost reminds me of, if you guys have ever seen Indiana Jones, which one? I mean, it's the one with where they're after the Holy Grail, pretty much. That's not is that the Ark of the Lost Covenant? I don't know. I'm not good with the names of those, but I remember watching those movies with my dad because he really likes them, and seeing the one guy who wasn't worthy of the Grail go up and touch it, and he kind of decayed and withered and died really quickly, and it was this big spiritual thing, and there was things flying, and when I see it, I think of this. So I guess that actually does connect, because it was almost deceptive, and it needed to be the right person to do the thing. But this specific cup and what's sitting in it, I don't like it. It really freaks me out a little, and it also reminds me of Children of the Corn. I don't know why, if you guys have ever seen that scary movie, because there's really bad kind of animation in it, and it's this red seething blob thing that goes through the cornfields, and it's supposed to be the devil or something, and that just reminds me of that. So we have two connections to movies that are less than positive experiences within the movie that I connect when I see this, or specifically that symbol in the card. So yeah, it's more to me than just deception. It's almost this scary beware, a warning card. I almost see it as a warning card. So actually, there are a lot of cups in here. Are there? Maybe I just put 3 cups. No, there's another one. Okay, I guess we have a lot of cups. I wasn't really paying attention to like the suits or anything like that, more so just the card itself. But we have the 8 of cups here, and I mean, I'm sure you guys know these symbols in these cards, but I always felt like a lot of the definitions I read in the beginning of my tarot studies um, really almost portrayed this as like a sad, solemn, not negative card, but like down and out. Um, and like being almost felt like you have to cast yourself out and things like that. And to me, I think this is like, well, disclaimer, this is actually my favorite card in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck or like system. I see it really as like the card of like the hero of the introverts in a way, or like somebody who um, goes off on their own and can do these great things and make things happen for themselves, and who has a dream and is willing to almost like ignore the naysayers and to go off on their own. And I feel like they are backed up by the moon. I feel like that's like a guardian looking after this person, not just watching them, but actively following them and being willing to have their back on this journey, that they aren't just alone, but that they're willing to kind of leave aside convention. And I think I've probably just more so resonated with the character here and wanted to and felt this sort of tie to them in a way. I like to spend a lot of time by myself, and I do feel as though a lot of like what my path has been is something that I kind of go about by myself. So I guess that's probably why, but I also just really find this blue, this like almost like empty blue space up here to be extremely relaxing. It reminds me of like dusk, but when there's still a lot of light, and it's almost like a really fun time, like between night and day. And there's just something about it to me that feels so relaxing. When I see this, I automatically feel reassured and happy. So I like this card. Next, we have the Hierophant. And for this card, I was like trying to think of how I wanted to put this. So it reminds me of church. I mean, that I think a lot of people, and the negative connotations that a lot of people have, that a lot of people work through in terms of this card, have to do with organized religion and poor experiences or bad experiences that we may have had in our past or our childhood. And I don't think I'm any different. I think that's what I have with this card. I think I've gotten past it for the most part, but I can't help but like never like this card. Like when it comes up, I always want it to be like something else. Like I like fight it almost when the card comes up for me, or I almost feel like it's a card that I really have had to work hard in terms of reading for clients and reading it accurately. It does remind me of church. It reminds me of someone standing there, and it reminds me of dogma in a not so pleasant sense, and it reminds me of like his hand held up here. I know that that's like not what he's doing here, but it reminds me of when somebody holds their hand to like tell you to be quiet, to silence you, and that's what that reminds me of. Or like in church when like kids would talk or something like that, and sometimes they would be like they wouldn't want to like raise their voice at someone, and they would just the hand. And so I get reminded of that, and it almost just feels like he's like silencing them or thinks that he's like better than them. Yeah, so I know that like I think that there is a lot of positive connotation to be had where this card is concerned, but that I struggle to find it, even when it's actually the case. And like that's why I'm like when I'm getting the card, and that's yeah, I have to fight for the messages with him. So next we have the Tower card, and I used to like see it as like the end all be all worst card, and now I see it so much differently. So I think this is more about my journey with it. I mean, I always laughed, and I've heard other people say this too, but like I remember the first time I saw it, I was like, the proportions and like the perspective and like how the people are falling, and I'm like, it doesn't really look like they're falling very far. So I wasn't ever thinking it was like this catastrophic death situation, but I definitely thought of it as this like bad card. I think now I associate it a lot with the ego. So actually that's a lot of where I draw my definition from it, is like a deconstruction of the ego for beneficial purposes, or like for growth, in terms of growth. I also see it as a card of inspiration. I think that as far as me viewing like almost like the worst kinds of messages or the most jarring messages you can get from tarot, this is not it for me anymore. This is not what is going to like make me quake with fear. It's also my birth card. So like yeah, when I think most of us have two birth cards, because then I reduce this further and I get the Chariot. But this is like what, when I add up my birthday, this is my birth card. And at first I was like, oh, that sucks. I'm so like upset that I have the Tower card as my birth card. And I don't know. I've kind of grown to love it because of that, because I feel like I have this connection to it. So I almost like have had to fight to want to understand it in different terms and in a different light. And I think that it's a very multifaceted, complex card that is meant to help. Is almost like a tough love card. So that's like my journey with it. But when I see it, it's almost like it feels like I'm seeing like me, or a portion of me. Yeah. Okay. Next we'll go for the Four of Cups. And this one, again, I think it has something to do with this open blue space in the background that gives me a good feeling. Because now I'm noticing it's the same with the Eight of Cups, although the blue is is it a similar tone? No, yeah, it's a little bit lighter in the Four of Cups than it is in the Eight, but something about like the open blue space of like the sky, it gives me a good feeling. But at the same time, now like I do get reminded of this. As a kid, I was always scared that at some point in time I would just fall up, like that gravity would go the opposite, that there wasn't something up there to like protect me. Like I knew when I was pulled down, the ground was like a barrier, so I'd be pulled against the ground and I was fine. But if I ever for some reason, and I thought that this could happen, or for some reason feared it might, that gravity would reverse and that I would be pulled upward. And whenever I saw blue sky, I felt like nothing would stop me. Like I felt like if I got pulled up and there was a bunch of clouds in the sky, that I would land on a cloud. And I thought when there was just a blue sky, in my head I thought I was going to just fall up and into space and endlessly fall up. I don't know why I thought that, but as a little kid, that was something that happened in my mind. So it was a little bit more, I had like some anxiety connected to just seeing a blue sky without any clouds in it. I was like, it needs to have clouds. It doesn't feel safe. I don't I don't like being outside when I just see this blue sky and no clouds. So very odd, I know. But that's a feeling that I had. And then in connection with this card, I almost see like, well, like a hand coming out of this. So when I first saw the card, I was like, this must be special because all of the aces have a hand coming out of a cloud giving something to someone. And I'm like, and this is like the Ace of Cups, like it came to him. And I don't know. So I always just thought this card was special. And then hearing, like, knowing that it's more of like to me, like a meditative card, a contemplative card, thinking about like what it is that we really want and fulfillment. Like these are questions and the sort of things that are really important to me in like a daily sense that like invade my thought space. So I really enjoy seeing this card, and when I see it in a reading for me or for others, I get a little bit, not like giddy or excited, but like I think it's a great opportunity. So I almost view it as like an opportunity for higher awareness, emotional awareness, like an awakening of what it is that like life is to us and like meaning and purpose. So I feel that way. And it also reminds me kind of like of a fairy tale. Like if you've ever heard of like, what is it, Miss Muppet, and like she's sitting like under a tree and then there's like the spider that comes down beside her. And I just imagine that tale, like when she's sitting under the tree and she's eating her, what is it, like porridge or something, and the spider comes down, and like I never would like to lay against trees because of the bugs. When I was a kid, I love being outdoors and I don't hate bugs, but I don't like them touching me, like the insects. Like certain ones I'm fine with actually, like ladybugs, butterflies, like the little roly-poly pill, but like whatever those are called, bugs, those are fine. There's like certain, it's weird, but like certain bugs I'm okay with being on me and certain ones I'm not. But I would never like the idea of like a spider touching me. So I wouldn't want to sit on a tree because like all of the trees around me have a lot of spiders in them. So yeah. Long story short, there's just a bunch of things in this card that I think about, and yeah. So we have the Eight of Swords, and for her, I always viewed this more so. Not that I viewed her or the person that this represents as like dumb, but I'm like, it doesn't really look like they're wrapped up very tightly. Like in my head, like there's a part of me that just thinks of it so technically. Like she's not wrapped up that tightly. Like there's all these swords, she can just cut it so easily. Like she doesn't even need to cut it, and like her feet aren't even bound. Like she can just walk around. So there is like this weird part of me that's like just fix it, girl. Like do something about it. Like fix your situation. And then that's funny when I get it, and I'm supposed to be that girl, and like it's like just fix your situation. Like, I view this as a card like calling us to be more creative and to be almost like to find that inner genius to solve things or to have to look outside the box. So I almost view it as like when you're being a little bit too pessimistic. And I think that like in my head she just feels like a drama queen. So like when I get this card, I'm like, you're being a drama king, like a drama queen, James. Just like not get over it, but like it's not as bad as it seems. You can fix it a lot more easily than you think. Get with it, kind of thing. So I don't know. I think that the illustration is more so what leads me to that feeling that I've drawn from it. But I think that that's just really funny. So it's not like I laugh, but I almost view it as like a funny card now. I don't know. Okay, Temperance. And before I really knew like the definitions and like the meanings and correspondences with tarot, so like back in the beginning of my tarot journeys, I always would want to connect this card with water. And of course, like we literally see a glyph for fire, and like we know it's connected to Sagittarius. So now I have this newfound thing, not newfound thing, but like where I know it's Sagittarius, I'm Sagittarius. I almost feel this like kindred connection of like astrological proportions, and I don't know, but so I feel like I'm like, oh, I'm honored, like I love Temperance, about that balance and stuff. And then my moon is Libra, so it almost feels like where my moon wants to like help my sun sign. But I always wanted to think of it as like a more watery card, and then it's really more fire, like connected to fire. But then again, like learning more about like astrology and thought, how like I almost view Sagittarius as the watery fire sign, and I think that that's really true. So it almost feels like it's like encompassing my astrological sign. There's just something about it to me that feels so satisfying, and that I get really perplexed by it because I never quite understand what in terms of balance or ratios or it's talking about. So I think that I actually get confused by this card quite a lot, but at the same time like to see it, it's like an enigma for me. But that's how I feel about it. And then of course like it's an angel, and as much as I like just spoke on like the Hierophant and how I don't like that in terms of my upbringing and going to church and dogmatic religion, there is just something about the symbol of an angel to me that feels very reassuring, as though someone's come to my aid. Of all the cards, and this one being one that is an angel, I feel that way. It's like a comforting thing. Two more. So Three of Wands. To me, this is always the most confusing minor arcana card. It took me so long to feel like I had a definition or like a way of reading it that felt right. And it's funny, I will like go to a book and I always want to know how they're interpreting the Three of Wands. Like if I ever use a tarot book or I'm looking at a new tarot book that has definitions, the first thing I want to look at is their definition for the Three of Wands, because I find that this card and its definitions and like how people interpret it varies the most, and I found that so confusing. So like when I go through all my books, the definitions to me, they're so like if I looked at all of them, they all look so different to me compared to like all of the definitions for like temperance to me have like this like middle ground area where they meet and it makes sense, and I'm like, they see it a little bit differently, they see it a little differently, but like it's still temperance. For me, the Three of Wands, I see such disparate like interpretations that it confuses me. It confused me in the beginning, and I almost see it as a card of waiting. Um, and like almost like, well, I think a lot of people will see certain things that I'm about to say, but like, yeah, waiting a return on something that's already happened kind of thing, actively waiting. um but it's so funny when I see like definitions, something about it just like it confused me so much, and I don't know why. But because of that, it's like now a habit that I have when I look at tarot books to like go and find the Three of Wands. So yeah. And the final card we have is the Four of Swords, and I don't like this card. I mean, not that I don't like it, but like I think it's meant, not meant, but I think a lot of people see it as a more positive card of like a call for rest, like that you need, that's necessary, or like I know there's that those ties with like ailments and needing to rest for wellness, and so that you don't get sick or that you are burning yourself out and all that. But I almost view this as like a card of death. Like something about it just doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like a rest that you want. It doesn't feel like a rest that is rejuvenating to me. When I look at this card, it looks like a crypt in a mausoleum, and this guy is like turned to stone. He's been there for so long, or there's someone sleeping within it who's dead. And so to me, because it looks like a crypt or a mausoleum, and or potentially a crypt inside a church with the stained glass window, to me it feels like a card of death, of like you have been taken down and that's it, and you are resting and it is your final rest. And yeah, so there's just something about this that doesn't sit right with me, and I don't necessarily feel this rejuvenating rest from it that I think a lot of people do. So that's the final one for me. Um, yeah, so these were just a few cards that in particular give me certain strong feelings, or that I have like ties to certain symbols in. So yeah, I hope that you guys found this interesting. Anna, thank you so much for starting this tag. It really made me think about the cards and my own um, thought processes when I'm like looking at a card and how I read them. And it's really nice to get personal with tarot and to understand it in terms of us, because we're all so different. So yeah, thank you guys for watching, and until next time, bye.